Welcome back to the Backcountry Hunters and Anglers Podcast and Blast. This is Hal Herring. We're sponsored now by Sitka Gear. Sitka's the sole sponsor of the Backcountry Hunters and Anglers Podcast and Blast. Anybody listening to this probably knows that Sitka products are designed to get you through any of the most radical situations in the backcountry, or in the duck marsh or on the river. So if you're not already acquainted with their product, please check that out. We're proud to be associated with them. I'd also like to invite all the listeners to the podcast to Backcountry Hunters and Anglers 7th Annual Rendezvous. It's going to be the biggest gathering of conservation-minded hunters and anglers in our country. And this is happening April 12th through the 14th in Boise, Idaho. Meeting people like Stephen Ranella, Remy Warren, Randy Newberg, Hank Shaw. Hank's one of the best wild game cooks in the world. And you'll be able to rub shoulders with hundreds of other public landowners and public land sportsmen. It's always been a really good time. Tickets are on sale now, and they cover all kind of activities there. You've got the Brew Fest, the Camp Chef Cook-Off. There's all kind of seminars. What's growing in popularity has been the headlining storytelling event. It's just really a good time. It's not to be missed. If this is the kind of lifestyle you lead, your tickets are now available at backcountryhunters.org. This is Hal Herring. I'm here in Langston, Alabama, with Backcountry Hunters and Anglers Podcast and Blast. I've been traveling a bunch. It's freezing cold in Alabama, and I came down here to Langston, Alabama, to shoot a Steyr Scout rifle for an assignment I had. And I'm in a place here called Shootrite Firearms Academy, with one of my oldest friends, who's the instructor and teacher here, Tiger McKee. I've been trying to I was trying to think of how to describe this place for folks that's way out in the country on South Saudi off of Gunnersville Lake. And that's like a old-time crappie and bass fishing mecca. And for me, I go back to a writer that I love from New Mexico, Stephen Bodio. He wrote a book a long time ago called Querencia. And Querencia is a place, it's a Spanish term for a place in the bull ring where the matador feels most at home and most confident and relaxed. And of a very few places in my life I've had, Shootrite Academy has been a Querencia for me. I've been training with Tiger ever since he started this back in the 1990s. And he brought in a lifetime's experience of shooting and instructing from everywhere from the Whittington Center with the legendary Colonel Jeff Cooper to Thunder Ranch. He was an instructor at Thunder Ranch for a long time. His focus is on tactical applications of the AR-15 and the Colt 1911. He trains law enforcement, civilian, everybody. But what I've most gained here as a hunter is a serious study of rifle craft, and what Jeff Cooper himself called in his old book, The Art of the Rifle. Tiger's about as good there's a difference between, as he would say, after somebody's done something for 35 years, if you've done it in a certain way, instructing becomes teaching, in the same way that Musashi or Sun Tzu were teachers rather than simple instructors. And I think I don't have any problem recognizing that when I see it. And Tiger has brought a whole new approach and a whole new level of understanding to the art of the rifle. And that's what we're going to talk about today, because for me, ethical hunting is a four-legged chair, and one of those legs is being able to be truly integrated with your rifle so that you can effectively take game. And basically, like he said back in what was that skateboard movie? Do you remember what it was?
Lords of Dogtown?
Yeah, where he said, we don't want to be stinking up the place with bad technique. And that's kind of what I've strove for in my own life. I haven't attained it every time. But so Tiger, we were shooting a Steyr Scout here, which is a favorite rifle of yours, and I'm a convert to it after shooting it for a whole day, and that was a pleasure to do. But we don't have to talk about the Steyr. I want to talk a more general sense about what you do and what real rifle craft means and what you see in the students, some many students that you have. I want to go back a little bit and say that Tiger's the author of 2 books, The Art of, give me that. What's the first book?
My first book was The Book of Two Guns, The Martial Art of the 1911 Pistol and the AR-15.
Right.
My second book was AR-15 Skills and Drills, and both of those, and this is true of anything, using a firearm safely and efficiently is the key, and it doesn't really matter what the application is. Most of all, the fundamentals are exactly the same.
Okay.
Whether you're taking game for the table, whether you're target shooting, or if you're using it for self-defense, all the basic fundamentals as far as shooting accurately, being able to manipulate that weapon properly, and that always means safely and efficiently, all the fundamentals are the same across the board.
Right, gotcha. And as a hunter, I just see it as my ethical duty to be proficient with a rifle. But I also I have a deep love that you and I go back to early high school, and I have a deep love of rifle craft, and
well, that's how we were raised. Our parents, our grandparents taught us to respect firearms. They taught us how to use them properly and safely. At some point you go to get training from a professional and you learn, well, there's a lot more to it than my grandfather or my father were able to teach me. Maybe they were shooting all my life, but they never really did understand how deep all of this stuff goes.
Right. And as with any art, the deeper you go, the more doors open in front of you.
There's a lot of layers.
There are a lot of layers. It's a big onion. One of the things we talked about yesterday was that when you don't understand enough about rifle work to know what you're missing, that was a big point
it's definitely
to me.
a case of you don't know what you don't know. Nobody buys a piano and expects to play Beethoven. And for some reason, people will buy firearms, rifles especially, and they think, well, I just got to point it in the right direction and jerk the trigger, press the trigger, whatever, and the bullet will go where it wants to or needs to go, but that's not really the case. It's just like any art. If you want to get good at it, you have to study, you have to take training, and then you have to practice. That's one of the big things. Practice is where all the learning really takes place.
Right. And I actually know people, I honestly do, who say, I only fire my rifle 4 times a year. I want to zero it, and then I want to go out in the field and I kill all my game with 1 shot. That may or may not be true. But I also notice when I go hunting with people like that, they often do a lot of missing. And it gives the lie to the myth that you don't have to practice or whatever.
Yeah, we'll have students come here, and don't get me wrong, they're doing the right thing by getting training, but they'll come here and they've never fired their rifle except like on a bench with rest and supports.
Right.
So they've never shot it from offhand, they've never fired it from prone, and they don't understand all the fundamentals that are necessary to get a good, accurate hit every time you press that trigger. And
right.
If you're going to be a rifleman, yeah, you're going to miss sometimes, but when you press that trigger, it's because this is going to be an accurate shot. Yeah. If you're not assured of it, then you should not be pressing that trigger.
Right, gotcha. And that's sort of like against the idea of lobbing them out there and see what happens, especially on live game or on steel. I shoot a lot of steel.
I mean, as a hunter, your job is to take that game efficiently. And there's a difference between being effective and efficient. So, for example, maybe I fire 3 shots and eventually I get 1 good hit. Maybe I wound the animal and I have to track it down. Versus being effective would be firing 1 good, accurate shot to start out with.
Right.
And taking that game efficiently and humanely.
Right. And let's talk about how you get to that place.
Number one, you need to take training, get training. Training is the introduction of new techniques. So you go to somebody that truly knows what they're doing versus like your brother-in-law or something like that who's been shooting all their life. Just because you've been shooting all your life does not mean you've been doing it right.
When we were in here the other day, I was shooting a Steyr, and I'm somewhere in the middle of upper middle of riflery. I think I've done it all my life. Shot milk jugs as a child from 150 yards every time. But when I was doing that, I was torquing. I was holding that forestock and torquing that forestock,
right?
And consistently twisting it, and consistently missing. And then I found my right hand cramping on the grip on the buttstock.
And these are the small details that you get from a instructor or even better, a teacher. So you go to training and they teach you all these fine details because the devil is in the details. Like the platform, how you hold the rifle, how you mount it into your body. That's the foundation for everything that you put on top of that. If that's not solid, anything you add on top of it's not going to be solid.
Gotcha.
So you go to get training, which is the introduction of new techniques. And here you learn like how to mount the rifle up properly in the body, how to manipulate it, how to actually shoot it properly, the fundamentals of marksmanship. And then after training comes practice, which is the time you invest to actually learn these techniques so that then you can apply them on demand anytime, anywhere.
Gotcha. And let's talk about what some of those are. So, I mean, the other thing I noticed is you need somebody watching you.
Oh, yeah.
Because I shoot by myself a lot. And then I had trained my son and daughter. I had taught my son and daughter, and some of which I brought from bad fundamentals.
Sure.
Mostly we do okay, right? But one of the things that was interesting to me is I had to have somebody, and we've done this back and forth for years, but watching you and saying, you're jerking that trigger. Or you come to where you were telling me to say press, the trigger and all, and we'll get to trigger work here in a minute.
Yep.
But let's start out with this idea that I took from you, which is precision rifle is a wonderful thing, and having a precision rifle is a wonderful thing in your hands. But we're getting overly concerned about bench rest type accuracy when we can't replicate that in the field. Tell me about that.
One of the things that you see the trends today especially is long-range precision shooting, which is cool, as far as that discipline goes. Some people are into just seeing how much accuracy they can wring out of a setup, hand loading ammo, fine-tuning, all that. But it really doesn't do you much good in the field. People get a little too obsessed. Oh, my rifle will shoot a half minute. It'll shoot a quarter minute. And it can very well do that.
And you see this here, right?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
But that's beyond our ability to shoot it as far as, most mortals go, unless you just spend all day on the range all the time.
Right.
That accuracy is beyond what we can do with it in the field. Mm-hmm. Like in the field under adverse conditions, modified positions that are less than perfect. If you can shoot a minute at 100 yards, 2 minutes, 3 in the field, that will do what you need to do.
Right. And then, but doing that in a snowstorm or in a pouring rain in the Mississippi Delta or in the high mountains at below zero is an entirely different thing than setting that rifle on the bench.
That's a world away from being on a sunny afternoon on the range with the rifle on the bench and it supported and all that stuff. And really all you got to do is get it aiming in the right direction and then press the trigger smoothly versus your body being the platform for the rifle.
Right.
There's no bench now, so you're having to make sure that you get the right stance, the rifle mounted in the body properly. All of that allows you to aim and shoot accurately. Again, if that's not solid, your shots are not going to be accurate.
Gotcha. So let's back up to absolute starting point here. and we'll get to that, but it's all right. So you told me the other day, it's like, and I really wanted to I wrote this down, but consistency is your key. And you got to consistently do it right.
Consistency is mandatory. So consistency means I always use the proper technique. For everything I need to do with that rifle, there is a proper technique to use. So by using the proper technique consistently, that does several things for me. Number one, it makes me safe. Anytime that we're handling firearms, safety is our number one primary concern. You got to have that safety locked in. So consistently using the proper technique makes me safe. Consistently using the proper technique makes the learning process easier. If I do it the same way every time, all the time, regardless of where I am, what I'm doing, doesn't matter. If I use the proper technique, I'm actually improving the learning curve. Every repetition I perform is a learning repetition. And the brain doesn't have a filter to like shunt or reposition or offload the bad repetitions. I think about my brain as like a big 50-gallon drum. Every time I do something, that repetition goes into that drum. Then when I need it, like in the field, I'm reaching into that drum without looking. And all the repetitions, good ones and bad ones, feel the same. So I reach down into that drum, I pull out the technique I need. If I've got good ones mixed in there with bad ones, I'm not really sure what's going to come out when I need it. If I put good ones in there, then I'm going to get good stuff out of it. So it's important for the learning because every repetition is an opportunity to learn. Every bad repetition it can be, disastrous in the field.
Right. Well, that's one thing. Sometimes it drives me crazy here because I just want to shoot, right?
Sure.
And we were running that Steyr rifle, and everything has to be done like exactly right over and over. And
like I showed you, every time I would pick up that rifle, it would go into what we call a low ready, which means stock is in the shoulder, muzzle's pointing down, which is safe. I'm going to check it to make sure it's clear, all that stuff. That's every time I do that, every time I pick up a rifle, I'm running through that same sequence. Because for every one bad repetition, it depends on who you read and study as far as the psychology goes, and obviously it depends on the individual. For every one bad repetition, it's going to take 40 to 50 good repetitions to push that one over to the side. But then that bad one's still in that drum, and it might come out, when you least need it to. Murphy's Law kicks in.
Right, under stress.
Sure.
And I know you were saying, you always said, I've heard you said this to me a lot, but I've heard you say it to, I don't know how many, you say do thousands of students over your career, know. It's like, hey, man, it ain't a garden rake. It's a deadly weapon.
Yeah, firearms are by nature, by design, lethal.
Yeah.
Our job is to operate them, use them safely. So you'll see guys, number one, they'll pick up a rifle like it's a 2x4 or a garden rake, and it's like, dude, this is a lethal weapon. You should treat it accordingly,
right?
Which means safely. And then you'll see guys and they're handling rifles, and you go, hey, you kind of did that wrong. You should do this. And they go, well, if I was in the field, I would have done it that way. Like, wrong answer there, dude. You would have probably done it that way, only much worse under stress.
Right.
So, again, consistency is the key to learning, being safe, and efficient application of that firearm.
Right. And for some of us, like me, who shoot a lot out in the prairie and whatnot, I have... In a sense, I'm an autodidact in that, and I have consistently applied some of the wrong techniques over and over again. And that's just true. And I've been doing it all my life. This comes up over and over.
Yeah, if you're not making mistakes, you're not really learning.
Right.
That's part of the process. But we need to take care of all of that before we hit the field to, shoot game. So, for example, we're looking at, if you went to school and every day when you showed up for school, you had to take a test. you're not going to score very well on the test. So what we want to do is think about the school thing. I go to school, I hear lectures, I take notes, I research and study on my own. I put in time, I invest time. And then every once in a while I get a big exam. And if I've studied, worked, practiced, I do well on that exam. If I went to school every day and took an exam, I would not be learning very much, and my performance would kind of suffer for sure.
Right, and shooting a big elk or a hog in the field is the exam, man.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and that's never been more clear to me. I mean, we did a lot of hunting this year, and being with my kids and their friends or whatever, it's the exam, buddy. And there's no learning going on in there when the game is at stake, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have time to be thinking about, what are the fundamentals of marksmanship? Where's the toe of the stock supposed to go?
Right.
You got to be able to apply those skills on demand, basically kind of at a subconscious level, which means your conscious mind can be thinking about trajectory and where you need to hold and all that stuff. And you also have to have confidence. I've done this on the range 100 times, 200 times, whatever the case might be. It's going to be no problem to do it in the field. But again, the only way you get that confidence is with consistency, proper technique. That gives you good results, predictable results from your actions. That gives me self-confidence, ego, whatever you want to call it. And then when I hit the field and it comes down to that shot, like maybe a one-in-a-lifetime shot,
right,
I know I can do this because I've done it hundreds of times before.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I did a podcast with some young hunters there, and we talked about intention and how there's some almost, and I know it's not supernatural, it's just something we don't readily understand immediately, but intention to kill that animal. This animal has showed up. I have my tags. I'm in the right place. I want this animal, and I'm going to take it. And it. One of the things that we didn't talk about in intention is how much practice it takes to realize that, and now I can do this.
Yeah, and that's that confidence thing.
Yeah.
It's all based on training, then practice, and then more practice.
Yeah.
And it's all based on consistency.
And before we go to fundamentals, and I'm gonna try to get you to explain fundamentals in a way that a person can listen to it and get something from it rather than just having it hand on. But before we get to that, to go back to intention was it. I've many times realized I couldn't make this shot or that shot, and I could have had I practiced it, you know.
Yeah, and practice gives you the ability to make that shot. But just as important, in my opinion, is it tells you when you shouldn't be pressing that trigger. Mm-hmm. If I can't make that shot, then I should not be taking it because I end up wounding the animal, something like that, which, you know, is never cool in my opinion.
Right.
But the confidence lets me know what I can do and equally important, what I cannot do. Like when I press that trigger with my rifle, it's because I know this is going to be a good hit.
Yeah.
If I'm not like 99.99% sure it's going to be an accurate hit, it's going to be the shot I need, then I should not be pressing that trigger.
Right. Gotcha. And then yesterday when I took something away from this that I'll never forget is when I missed that target to the left, and you said that shot is over. It's in the past. The next shot is yours. Right. So just really briefly, let's go to that because that was a big revelation.
After you press that trigger, the bullet is out of the barrel. That's in the past. There is nothing you can do about that. You have to focus on the present. This is the next shot I'm going to make. Because if I'm trying to make a follow-up shot, but I'm thinking about the shot that I jerked the trigger on, anticipated the recoil, it wasn't a good hit. The conscious mind can only think about one thing at a time. If I'm thinking about the past, I'm not thinking about the present. What am I doing right now? What do I need to do to get this accurate hit? Sure, I missed one, but I don't pay any attention to it. I correct or compensate as necessary, but then I got to apply my skills to get that follow-up shot.
Gotcha. Okay, and that was big for me because before I learned that, before I thought about that with you, I would have missed the next one worse.
Oh, yeah, it goes downhill rapidly from there.
So let's talk about what those fundamentals. In my notes here from the other day, it's strong hand, support hand, shoulder, cheek weld. Let's talk about how do you get, what do you want to do consistently? What am I looking for?
Okay, so the fundamentals of marksmanship, and these have been the same for ever since we've had firearms, are aim, hold, press, follow through. And you need to understand what each of those components is to be able to shoot accurately. So I've got to aim the rifle. And people go, well, you get it pointing in the right direction. Yeah, that's it. Very simplistic terms. But aiming requires, number one, having the proper platform. So you got the proper stance. Feet and legs are where they need to be. This is true if you're standing or if you're kneeling. It's true if you're in prone. So I got to have that proper platform for stability. Then I have to make sure I have the rifle mounted in the right place. So like one of the big issues we see with shooters, issues occurring with large numbers of people versus individual problems. One of the big issues we see is that people don't know where the actual pocket of the shoulder is to position that stock.
I could raise my hand there, and I've done it for all my life.
Yep.
I had it on my deltoid more than against the collarbones. Talk about that real quick.
Okay, so the pocket of the shoulder holds the rifle securely so that it's not walking around as you shoot. It also positions that rifle so that when you bring it on target and you hit your cheek weld, those sights are coming up to your eyes. This is true of iron sights or optics. I want to bring those sights to my eyes versus ducking my head down, having to lean it over to the side. So all of this is based on getting the rifle stock, the toe of the stock in the pocket. The way you find out where your pocket is, if you're a right-hand shooter, you raise your right arm hand straight in the air. Then you're going to bring the left hand in like a blade type fashion and hit the collarbone touching your neck. So you hit that collarbone touching your neck. Then you're going to slide that hand outboard till you feel the collarbone dip below the deltoid muscle. And you'll see a concave, a V-shaped area there. That's the actual pocket of that shoulder versus, like you said, further out on the deltoid or the muscle there.
Right. And which immediately brings you to felt recoil, because I changed everything with that Steyr Scout rifle when I had it exactly right. And people are going to go, holy smokes, he didn't even know where to put the rifle. But that's not necessarily true. I just didn't put the rifle consistently in the right place every time under pressure.
Exactly. And it's not one of those things you're going to learn by instinct. Like the majority of the things we have to do to use a firearm successfully are counterproductive to natural instinct. Yeah.
Counterintuitive.
There's very little instinctual. People talk about he's a natural shooter. He's an instinctual shooter. If you didn't come out of your mom with it, then it ain't natural. So like I've yet to see, what is it, World Weekly Globe Reporter thing they sell at the cash register?
Yeah.
I've yet to see one of those, and it's like baby born with a Glock 19. When I see that, I'm going to go, okay, that kid's natural. He may be ugly, but he's like a natural shooter.
We finally found one. So you've got the butt, and one of the things that happened with me was the toe of the stock, the bottom of the stock, was way higher as I raised my rifle than I have ever put it before.
Yeah, the key there, again, like I mentioned, is you want to bring the sights up to your eyes. A lot of people will get the butt of the stock too low in the shoulder, which means when they bring the rifle up, they have to stick their neck out, stick their head forward to get a cheek weld on that stock. You want to have the toe of that stock positioned in the pocket of the shoulder, so when you come up and hit the cheek weld on the stock, the sights are right in alignment in front of your eyes.
Gotcha. And I got that once I put the toe of the stock higher than I thought.
Oh my gosh, this feels so
totally
good.
Different. And then you're not chicken necking, and then you're not. And remember, you were telling me that it affects your breathing to have to tilt your head that far.
Sure. And I mean, this is the one place where natural instinct does come into play. We have a natural ability to bring stuff up to line of sight.
Mm-hmm.
So if we exploit that, that makes us more efficient. And, efficiency is key again, because usually time is a precious commodity. We may not have time to bring the rifle up, then be tilting the head to the side, or like you said, chicken necking it out to get the sight picture. We need to be able to do what Jeff Cooper called snapshot. Mm-hmm. You are in the ready position, you bring that rifle up, mount it, hit that cheek weld, those sights are right where they need to be, and then you're ready to press that trigger off.
Gotcha. And you use that too as press for the break.
So we aim by making sure we have the proper platform for that rifle. Again, it's not on a bench anymore. Our body is a platform. Again, consistency is the key, so that you do it the same way every time. Then we have to hold it steady, and that's going to, be concentrating on our breathing, making sure we're holding the sight picture steady, all that. And then the ultimate, most important part of this whole process is press the trigger. We're looking for what Jeff Cooper, again, I keep going back to Cooper, but, I think his rifle work was his big contribution. He was, the modern father of the modern technique for pistol defensive work, that kind of stuff.
Right.
You read and studied
all
his
of
works.
it, yeah.
But his rifle work, was, the best stuff. He called it a surprise break. I'm sorry, I think we were talking about snap shooting, weren't we? I got thinking about pressing that trigger.
Yeah, but no, but no, I'm interested in, because even in a snap, you're still press the trigger.
So I press the trigger. Most people think it's their job to make the rifle fire.
Yep.
And they go, I'm going to shoot now. And then they slap or jerk the trigger. They tense up their muscles in anticipation of the recoil. Actually, our job is to get the rifle pointing in the right direction with the proper platform, hold, all that. Then we press the trigger smoothly.
Yeah.
And we let the rifle fire when the rifle decides it's time to fire. So if I press the trigger smoothly, the rifle fires when it decides it's time to fire. That gives me a surprised break, and I get an accurate hit every time. It's like magic.
Yeah.
But if I go, I'm going to shoot now, I'll slap or jerk the trigger, I'll tense up my muscles in anticipation of the recoil, and that shot's not going to go where I need it to go.
Right. And that was like magic for me the other day. Because you even said, like, the internal mechanism of the rifle is doing it, not you.
Yeah.
And there's some idea, there's some way when you divorce yourself from outcome,
check.
You do your job, and then the outcome is what you want.
Yeah, a lot of people get far too caught up in what we call outcome-based thinking. They're worried about where the bullet's going to go. What if I don't make a good shot? As opposed to concentrating on the process to make a good shot, which gives you a good shot.
Right. And all right. And before we move to that, I want to go to the 4-point connection to your body is strong hand, support hand, shoulder pocket, and cheek weld.
Yeah, so that rifle's attached to your body in 4 points. You got the stock in the pocket of the shoulder like we talked about. You need to make sure that you got a proper cheek weld on the rifle. Now, with some hunting rifles, this means you may have to raise the comb of the stock to give you the proper cheek weld, so you're getting a clear, crisp view through the optic. Because a lot of people are running large optics. They've got large, high mounts on them. If you get a cheek weld, you can't see through the scope, so you have to build the comb of that stock up some. So you got to have the proper cheek weld. You got to have your strong hand, good grip on the rifle. And when I say good grip, you're not squeezing it. You're just kind of pulling it gently into the pocket of the shoulder to seat that stock, so as you fire, it doesn't bounce around in your shoulder and, bruise you or any of that.
Right.
And then you have to have that support hand, and that's the key. It's called support hand. That hand should just simply create a cradle for that handguard to rest in, as opposed to, like you were talking about earlier, you were gripping the handguard really tight with the support hand. You were actually twisting and torquing the rifle one side to another. The tighter I grip it, the more pressure I use, the more movement is going to transfer from my body to the muzzle. So I just need to have that support hand supporting the rifle.
Right.
And that gives you a good, solid platform, and that gives you accurate hits every time.
And two, on that, if anybody's ever seen, say, my daughter's rifle, and I learned that here, but we have a camping pad, a sleeping pad, folded over the stock with duct tape.
Duct tape. There you go.
And that
you're from Alabama.
Yeah, indeed I am. and they that rifle, people go, holy smokes, look at that new age cheek pad, right? But the thing is, when you pick up that little Model 7, your eye goes straight through that scope to the center of the reticle.
And the other thing is that makes me efficient, but it also helps reduce parallax. If you don't have that eye behind the scope in exactly the same place, then that reticle is going to move around some. And if you want to really get into parallax, look it up on the internet because there's all kind of information on
right.
there. But basically it means if you don't have your eye in the same position behind that optic, then that reticle's not going to be in the same place, which is going to affect your accuracy.
Right. The best chapter on parallax I know is in that John Plaster book,
sure.
The Modern Sniper.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And that's the first place I ever had it explained to me, layman's terms, real fast. Now
right.
I get it. But so you've created, and one of the things I noticed, we were using a sling yesterday, and you sling up. Check this out. This is a wholly new world to me. If you're shooting offhand, you don't need to sling up because you've got using the sling as part of your platform,
right?
Because you don't have the point. So could you talk about that real quick?
Yeah, you should only use a shooting sling to sling the rifle up for stability when the support elbow is actually supported on something. So say if I'm in a brace kneeling position where I have the support elbow on the support knee, if I can loop that sling up, that cinches everything down. It tightens it down and gives me stability. But if that left elbow is not supported and you sling up, it's not really doing anything for your stability and accuracy. Actually, it might be kind of more harmful than it is good.
So yesterday, every one of my heartbeats, when I tried that, every one of my heartbeats shifted the rifle over to the left because it was slung around my left hand elbow so tightly.
Right.
It was like boom, boom,
over
to the left.
Once you got it in there, it's like rock solid. But again, you shouldn't sling up unless that support elbow is supported on something.
Okay, gotcha. And which brings us to a really quick little thing was your my stringer's going horizontal. Remember you explaining to me?
Yes, sir. If you have the bullets when you're firing your groups, you're on the range practicing, testing new ammo, whatever the case might be. If you have your shot stringing horizontally from left to right, that usually means your body position is changing between shots. If it's vertical stringing up and down, that usually means you're not controlling your breathing. So when we talk about body position, especially in the beginning, what you want to do is get into your firing position, whether it be standing, kneeling, prone. Then you're going to get everything lined up on the target. You're going to shut your eyes, inhale and exhale deeply 3 or 4 times. Open your eyes. If the sights have shifted left or right, then you need to reposition your whole body as opposed to using muscle tension to bring the sights back on target. What we're looking for is to establish what's called natural point of aim. In POA, you'll see it a lot of times. Natural point of aim means I'm relying on my body's bone structure versus muscle tension. Again, we get back to that consistency thing. Muscle tension is never as consistent as bone support. So I want to use the least amount of muscle tension as possible. I want to rely on bone support. The way I do that is check my natural point of aim. If it's shifted left or right, I reposition my whole body until eventually when I open my eyes after inhaling and exhaling a few times, the sights are exactly where they need to be. That means I've got that natural point of aim established. My body should not be shifting between shots then. It should be really good and stable.
Right. Okay. And so, you've got your platform built. You've understood what natural point of aim was, and that was a big thing for me the other day, by the way, because I did achieve where I every time I opened my eyes, the reticles were in the center of the target.
And that means after the recoil, when you follow through being recover from the recoil, reacquire the sight, and get everything ready to shoot again.
Yeah,
you're going to recover from that recoil much more efficiently versus having to use muscle tension to bring it back on target after the shot.
Gotcha. So, when you're doing this, you were telling me that 90% of your work is actually dry fire practice, right?
Yeah, we know that practice, repetition is mandatory to learn these skills. The experts, and dude, these are people that know a whole lot more about this stuff than I ever will. They say that 90% of your practice should be done dry without ever firing a shot. That's where the true learning takes place. Again, when we get on the range, we get into that outcome-based thinking. We're like, where'd that shot go? Where'd that shot go? When you dry practice, you're not concerned about where the shot went. So you're focusing on good, stable position, breath control, controlling the breathing, pressing the trigger smoothly. 90% of your practice is done without ever firing a shot. Back when I was younger and I had actually time to do this stuff, I would shoot NRA high power competition with the AR,
Yeah.
And so after Gretchen, my wife would go to bed. I'd break out my rifle sling coat and all that stuff. I'd get into sitting. I'd get into kneeling. I'd get into prone, and I'd dry practice like hours at a time. Very few people I know have the time and ammunition to learn this stuff live fire.
Right.
90% of your practice. Again, it's kind of like the school thing. You practice. Then you just go to the range and confirm, yeah, I'm doing all this stuff, and the shots are going exactly where I want them to go.
Right. It's like the old joke when the beatnik days,
How do you get to Carnegie Hall?
Yeah. They come to New York City. He goes, practice, man, practice. He goes, I was just looking for direction.
If you read Malcolm Gladwell, I think he did the thing about the 10,000 hours.
Yep.
That if you want to be the best at anything, it's going to take 10,000 hours. Now, we ain't looking to be the best. We're just looking to be real good.
Effective.
Yes,
yeah, sir. Effective. And it is true that if you are as best as you can be, when you do that hunt that costs you all your savings for the year, you got the chance to make it right. And I know that must happen to people. You don't hear that story much because people don't want to tell it, but
I don't think I'd told that one.
But I'm thinking if you own a rifle, I shoot 308s, and that's pretty much what you shoot here.
Yep.
But if you own a rifle where every time you touch that thing off, it's a $3.
Oh, sure.
Then you really better be dry fire practicing.
Yeah, that's another thing is just the financial part of it. You were talking about, you spend thousands of dollars to go to Africa, do a hunt and all this stuff, or go to the Rockies to hunt elk and stuff.
Right. Alaska for sheep.
You better make sure you've invested the time to be able to make that shot. I would imagine, I've never been able to afford that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I would imagine it would be kind of heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It's that reminds me, I got to tell a joke. The guy that went on the big hunt, shot the big elk thing, he goes, bragging to his buddies, this one cost me $20,000. And he goes, man, it's a good thing you didn't kill two of them.
There'd be a lot less practice in the coming year. Yeah, that's austerity programs are hard on accuracy if you're shooting a lot.
And so dry practice is affordable.
Yeah.
You can do it at home, anywhere that you got the ability to do it safely and all that. All of that's a major concern. And you actually learn more through dry practice than you do when you're worried about where'd that bullet go.
Right. Well, so what happened to me a couple of years ago was shooting some fairly high-end, precision rifles. The guy said to me, he said, you have a problem with your follow-through. And we were shooting these golf balls.
Sure.
Far, far away.
Right.
And I wanted to hit the golf ball so badly. And you could see the golf ball clearly through the scope, but you couldn't see the golf ball at all with the naked eye, And I was very invested in the golf ball doing whatever it did. They got those rubber bands in them. I had all these imaginations how great it was going to be. And he said, you're actually picking your head up off the stock to see something that you cannot see with the naked eye.
Yeah, follow through, man. That's a big one that a lot of people don't think about. Follow through is a critical component if you're trying to shoot accurately. So follow through prepares me to shoot again, because maybe that shot didn't go where I thought it was going to go. But also follow through is a critical component to accuracy. So follow through means you're recovering from the recoil, you're reacquiring the sights on target, you're getting everything back steady and smooth. Because every time you shoot that rifle, there's all kind of harmonics going on. The rifle shoved to the rear, the barrel's twisting, flopping. I mean, if you ever see ultra slow motion of a barrel, it looks like a piece of spaghetti when that bullet travels through it. All of that stuff is affected by how you follow through, how your body and platform is. So if you're consistent, then the rifle's going to do pretty much the same thing every time. The shot's going to go where you want it to go. If as soon as you press off that shot, your finger's coming off the trigger, your head's coming off the scope to try to look and see what's going on, that's going to affect where that bullet goes because you're inconsistent. That rifle is basically like an extension of your body. So like kinesthetics and proprioception and all that stuff comes in. Yeah, it's like wood, metal, plastic, whatever. But once I'm holding it, it becomes an extension of my body. So I need to make sure I'm not doing anything weird before the bullet comes out of the barrel. People go, oh, that's impossible. That bullet's moving at 3,000 feet per second or whatever. But then you see it all the time. As soon as people think the rifle's about to shoot, they anticipate the recoil, then they start coming off the stock and this and that before the bullet ever exits the barrel. That'll affect your accuracy, so follow through is critical to shooting accurately.
And a lot of people listening to this will be bow hunters.
Sure.
And nobody understands that better than a really good
or like
archer.
A flintlock shooter.
Or,
it's going to be 30 seconds before that bullet comes out of the barrel.
You bet. And that might be good training. I shot a flintlock a couple of times, and the second time I did it worse than the first.
Because you knew what was coming.
Yeah, because I knew what was coming. You had a piece on here about rifle craft, rifle work is serious business, and you just treat it seriously. You honor the weapon. You honor yourself.
To me, it's number one, you're working with a lethal weapon. Now, people freak out and they go, lethal weapon, but so is a chainsaw, so is a car. All the tools we use can be lethal. So it should be approached with a serious nature. If all you're going to do is go to the range and kind of target shoot, that's one thing. But if you're going to be shooting a living creature, hunting, you're trying to put meat on the table, then that's a serious kind of thing and should be approached accordingly, which means the right frame of mind. You have your heart right. You know your gear. You know your equipment. You've invested the time. There's today, man, a lot of people who call themselves riflemen, they call themselves that because they buy a bunch of gear, but they don't know how to use it. Most of us would be really well off if we bought like a $800 good accurate rifle and then like a case of ammo and spent a bunch of time shooting it and then dry practice and then shooting a little more and dry practice a bunch and shoot so that we knew how to use that gear.
Yeah.
And there's also you have to invest time. It's easy to buy gear. It's difficult for some of us to block out the time necessary for our practice or to spend the money and time to go get the proper training so you know what to practice. So it requires an investment. And if you're going to invest that stuff, then there should be like an emotional investment that goes along with it as well. None of this has changed since we use spears, bows, and arrows and all of that stuff. If you don't know your weapon, if it's truly not a part of you, if there's not an emotional attachment, you will do okay, but you're never going to do as well as you could do. Right.
And I found that yesterday working that rifle, and this fall I did a lot of shooting, and I found that I learned more day before yesterday here of undoing bad habits than I had really in the last couple of years shooting on my own.
Yeah.
But I've always had that emotional connection with one rifle or
That's
another.
how we were raised.
Yeah. Either like my BLR, which was, it was hard to shoot a good group with it, but it was given to me by my father at age 14.
Right.
I killed my third or third deer with it, and it carried me with it. I mean, it's completely the checkering is completely worn smooth on that rifle from carrying it in the Rocky Mountains.
Oh yeah.
So
but every inch of that rifle.
I do completely. And when I pick it up, it's like coming home to a place.
That's like I've still got the original 22 single action bolt action rifle my dad bought me and my brother. We had to share it, don't you know?
Right.
Turtle Killer.
Yeah,
you've seen Turtle Killer.
You bet. Yeah.
And I mean, I can pick that rifle up, and it just. Number one, I can do anything a 22 will do with that rifle, but also it immediately takes me back, and there's like a flood of emotions when I'm remembering this is when me and Dad did this.
Right,
this
right.
is when we did that. Here's when I killed those squirrels.
Yep. Yeah. That's an attachment, I think. So I don't know if that's as common as it was when. In say 50 years ago, when people were coming out of a different time in America's history, and there were less urban people, there were more rural people who grew up like that. But you can create that attachment.
Oh, it's
I promise
still there
you can
today,
for
sure.
Yeah, and I think serious hunters will create that attachment through being time in the field.
And that's one of the differences between a gun owner and a rifleman or rifle lady. Is that there is that emotional attachment. We've invested that time to learn what to do and to learn our rifle and learn our gill and learn how to work in the field and learn how to bring it to that great moment where you press off that shot and take that game.
Yeah. Or that hit on that steel yesterday.
Sure. That's satisfying too, isn't it?
Unbelievable. And then, and I did, when I did miss, at one time, I had learned your dictum when the dictum was, that is in the past, it's over.
Sure.
And I created the outcome for the next one by loosening that support hand.
Yeah,
and killing me.
Everybody's going to miss shots. The difference between a good shot and somebody that just kind of tries is that you might miss one, but the next one's going to be a good hit.
Yeah.
Somebody that doesn't train or practice, they're going to miss one. Then they're going to hurry up and try and catch up, and they'll miss another one. Then they go, oh, my gosh, I got to catch up, and they shoot again real quick, and they miss another one versus, well, I missed. Press for the next shot.
Yeah. And so you're really big on getting another one in the chamber while the rifle is still up as part of your follow-through.
Sure.
Can you talk about that a little bit? Because that's something I don't see in hunting very much, but I do it, and we have taken game that way that otherwise would have disappeared over a precipice. What I'm saying?
Just because you shot at them doesn't mean you hit them.
Or that it's over.
Or, they're down. So as soon as that shot is released and you followed through, then you need to be working that bolt on the bolt action, getting another round in the chamber, getting ready to take another shot, which should take you, like about a second and a half if you practice it, maybe even less time if you get really good.
Right.
So that if you didn't get a good hit, you're ready to follow through with another one that will be a good, accurate hit.
And that's something in the field that I see people don't do by rote, ROTE.
Yes.
They don't do that. They're like, did I get it? Did I make it? They're saying that in their mind. Really, really experienced people will assume that they got it.
An experienced shooter will know whether that was a good shot or not as soon as the shot breaks.
Right.
And they'll go, that is called, in calling your shot. Yes, that was a good hit.
Yeah.
Or, well, I don't think that's a good hit. I'm going to get ready and get a better one.
Right. So, there's lots to talk about on that, but what do you see amongst people? You teach a practical rifle class?
Yes, sir.
Is that what you call it?
Yeah, we call it like a general purpose rifle.
Yeah, general purpose. And I took that a long time ago when I first bought that Remington 700. But will you talk about what that is, basically?
It's what we've been talking about, learning how to use your rifle safely, the number one primary concern, learning how to use it efficiently, which means there's the shot. I need to make this shot regardless of whether I'm standing, I'm in sitting, I'm in prone. I can do what I need to do to make that shot. We learn how to apply the fundamentals of marksmanship, aim, hold, press, follow through for every shot. You learn how to actually load the rifle. And people go, I know how to load the rifle.
And boy,
but
have I seen, yeah.
There's an art to that.
Yeah.
Like we talked about a minute ago, for everything I need to do with that rifle, there is a proper technique to use.
Yeah.
And you ain't going to come up with it on your own. You know, like if you put a monkey on a typewriter, sooner or later, eternity, he'll get you Shakespeare.
Right.
We ain't got eternity.
Right.
You know, we've got to learn this stuff so that we can apply it. We don't have the ability to go like on some kind of monastic journey, you know,
right.
just train and practice and all every day.
It would be nice.
Sure.
Yeah.
But then, you know, life gets in the way.
Yeah.
So we've got to learn, here's the way to do it. Here's what I need to practice, and then invest that time so that you can do it. And that's general purpose rifle, is learning how to use that rifle, whether you're target shooting, hunting, doesn't matter. All the fundamentals are the same.
Yeah. Do you see, are there any universal weaknesses that you see in people that come to to your classes?
The number one would be just on the fundamentals of marksmanship.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I keep going back to that,
right.
but if you can apply those fundamentals regardless of where you are, what's going on, then you can do it every time.
Right.
And people go, aim, hold, press, follow through. Got it. But no, it's just because it's easy doesn't mean it's not complicated.
Right.
You know?
It looks easy, kind of like that Bruce Lee thing.
And like we were talking about, you know, I'll be demonstrating something, and I've been doing this stuff for 30, 35 years. And then people start trying to do it, and they're going, I don't look nothing like Tiger when he's doing it. But they're just starting out. I've been doing it for 30 years. It takes time to develop that technique, that skill.
Right. And I guess not having fundamentals is like, it's like that Tom Waits song where he said, well, he started out with bad direction. You know, like it's
no
like
direction, bad direction.
Yeah, right.
Again, it's not instinctual. You have to learn it.
And it's kind of like having the rifle off in the first place. As you get further off in your more demanding skill, you know, that you're in more demand. Say you've got to have this thing in the Rocky Mountains in a blizzard.
Oh yeah.
Well, that's the place where those fundamentals are going to be the absolute crucial.
That's the difference between getting what you need and being disappointed.
Yeah, for sure. And
everybody talks about, well, it was a great day in the woods. Sure, but it's a lot better day if you bring it home.
Right, and if you got something to eat. Right. In our case. I was Jeff Cooper started all that though. Remember he said I was out hunting all day. And they said, did you have any luck? And he said, yes, I was extremely lucky. I was out hunting all day. But an empty freezer is a terrible thing at the end of the hunting season. I'm here to tell you.
Them babies need their belly full.
They do, and they call that tag soup. And it's a mighty thin gruel, buddy. So one of the things you've been immersed in this life, you know, forever. I mean, I come in here, and when I was writing the famous firearms gun book, I used your library was one of my primary references.
Right.
And the rifle that I own came from a recommendation from you. The rifle that my nephew ended up with, same. You know, I mean, I've been able to draw on this resource now for as long as I can remember, really. But being And this is not for everybody, and I'm totally okay with that. It doesn't matter to me. But you have an immersion in this. It's not just warrior ethos, although that's part of it, but it's a very positive view of man, woman, and rifle. You know, that goes back, like we said, to caveman days. And I think of those Native American guns that I unpacked that time. I had that huge collection. Every one of them was decorated with brass tacks, sunbursts, symbols, you know, that meant something to the owner of that rifle.
Yeah, firearms, again, if there's that investment, that emotional attachment, they become very personal. You can kind of tell somebody who is a gun guy or girl when they will just pick one up. I mean, their whole demeanor will change, and they make that connection. Even if it's one they've never seen before, they'll pick it up, start becoming, it's like two friends exchanging information, conversation.
Right.
There's a definite relationship there. Or not. It's kind of up to you. But don't kid yourself. If you don't have this stuff plugged in, wired in, it's not going to serve you well in the field.
Right. And I remember I told you I could watch with people loading a rifle in the dark, in the cold.
Oh, yeah.
And putting them in the magazine. I can tell you from that, I always watch that because I can tell you from that how where I'm going to walk in front of, whether I'm going to walk in front of that person.
Does this guy know what he's doing or not?
Yeah. And I had that. I told you one of my successes in this world is just I've taught that because, and there's a fundamental for you. That's an efficiently loading that rifle and then safely chambering or not chambering around, knowing how to push them down with your thumb so you can slide the bolt over the top and not have one in the pipe.
Yep.
Those are the kind of things that are so basic, and they so I often see them ignored. I mean, it's a crazy thing, given the seriousness of our endeavor, right?
Yeah, it's I still find it shocking. I've been, both of my grandfathers were lawmen. My dad, you knew him, was in the special forces. I grew up around firearms. I mean, I've got pictures of them holding stuff up when I'm like 3 years old so I could press the trigger kind of thing. But it still amazes me that you see people who own these firearms, but they don't have any clue about what to do with them.
Right. And that can be easily remedied.
That's the deal. That's the deal. Yeah, is it can be fixed.
Yeah.
It's an easy solution, but you got to take those steps. You got to make that commitment.
Right. And so for we could do this forever. I mean, and we got to get back to the range too. But to shoot, I've got a bunch of stuff I want to do on the range today. But while we're in this big library and this office here at Shootrite, I wanted to talk about, for whoever wants it, right? This not for everybody, but it's the literature of this kind of stuff we're talking about, which you've been immersed in forever. I've been immersed in for as long as I can remember, and we were talking about The Art of the Rifle by Jeff Cooper, and that one stands up, right? That book.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
We talked about investment and everything, and that doesn't just mean working with your firearms. That means reading, research, and study. And the cool thing about all these books that we read and study is that they're just like great reads. Even if you weren't interested in rifle craft, these are good reads that people should research and study.
You have a favorite? You have any one you can pick out?
When it comes to rifle work, there's like the classics, You've got McBride, A Rifleman Went to War.
Right.
That should be like mandatory reading for anybody. That's
right. And just for briefly, so McBride was a shooter in the Midwest, right?
And then he went in World War I.
He joined up.
So you got this guy that was like a hunter, a master rifleman, and then the situation, the times called for him to go to war.
Well, he didn't have to go, but he
took.
Yeah.
Well, he did. Because he did.
Right.
And so he took these skills, and applied them for the good of mankind, basically. And then you got like sniping in France. That's one of the good ones.
I'm looking at it right now.
And you got Shores with British snipers.
Yeah.
And all of these guys were game hunters.
Right.
So the stuff they talk about in these books, they're relating it to hunting and that kind of stuff. So those are like some of the classics. And then like you mentioned earlier, Jeff Cooper, The Art of the Rifle. That should be a mandatory book for anybody that owns a rifle. And then, of course, he's got a lot of stuff, but To Ride Shoot Straight and Speak the Truth.
Right.
That's one of the classics by Cooper.
And you can sit there. I've had owned that book forever, and he is so irritating. Like he's an extreme right winger, but he can justify. Because
Sure.
he's a really good thinker and writer, and you're like going, oh man, I was totally disagreeing with him. He's fighting in Guatemala,
Right. Yeah.
and I've spent some time in Central America and stuff, and I would be on the other side of that conflict from him completely. But here he is, and he's like, here he's thinking it out.
He was a man of opinions.
He was a man of stone. You met him, right?
Oh yeah, I trained with him, man. I think 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
He actually invited me to go to Africa to hunt with him. But
Yeah.
at that time in my life, being a young newlywed, and there was no way I could
Right.
afford to travel with those guys.
Well, they were probably getting it comped as well.
Oh, who knows?
Yeah.
All I knew is I couldn't afford it.
Was he the ultimate curmudgeon?
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely.
Right.
You might not have liked him, but it was hard to disagree with what he said.
Right. And if you did disagree with it, he's going to bring that. You're going to have to bring the A game, buddy.
You better stand correct and be ready to defend it.
Yeah, because so I recommend that book too. Right, to ride, shoot straight, and speak the truth. And it may enrage you, but a lot of it is just really pretty writing about. It's a deep study,
Yeah, it's a good read.
Yeah, the art of the rifle is a deep study.
Yes, definitely.
So more on the psychology of all, which you'd put me into a long time ago, and this is Lanny Basham.
Yeah, with winning in mind, it's Lanny Basham. He was an Olympic world-class shooter, coach, and all this stuff, and so he writes about what he calls like a mental management system.
Gotcha.
And it applies. Here's the cool thing about a lot of this stuff. It applies to everything we do in life. Mm-hmm. So he talks about, developing the right mental strategies to be able to perform properly. And the cool thing about it, he's a rifleman, so he relates it to rifles. So, no offense, but it's not some kind of hippie guru kind of stuff,
right? Sure.
Which is cool too. You
right.
might read that too.
Right.
There's room for everybody.
Yeah.
But if you're a rifleman, you're really going to dig his book. And then, we talked about this on the range, and I say this to students, and most of them think I'm kidding. Some of them get it. But what we're really teaching are like life lessons.
Right.
These skills, these techniques apply to anything you do in life.
Yeah.
If you can do this stuff and apply it to, or you could take whatever you do in life and apply it to rifle shooting. It's all connected.
Yeah. Right. We talked about that a lot. I know in Winning in Mind, I still go back and read that for that reason.
I'm worn out like 3 or 4.
Yeah,
I read it 3 or 4 times a year. I'm on my 3rd, 4th, 5th copy.
Right on. We'll do a tip of the hat too to Lone Zwigger, the 2-time Olympic champion from Carter, Montana.
Yeah.
He just died.
Oh,
and
wow.
as we go fishing on the Missouri River, you go through Carter. There's a ferry there that crosses the river and a grain depot. With the big grain silos.
Right, yep.
And it says, home of Lone Zwigger.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And you can really see how he got, he was military.
Yeah.
But they have huge expanses, and they have these big coulees like for backstops.
Right,
You could shoot safely where he grew up, really anywhere. And I imagine during the time he grew up, it was
even better.
It was the culture.
Like around here, it's hard to find somewhere to shoot 200 or 300 yards or longer.
Yeah. And for people who are limited in their, do people join? I live in a place where we're lucky enough to have a place to shoot. But do people join ranges? Your students, do they pay for range time? What do they? Not here. In general.
Yeah. In the South here, there's like rifle and pistol clubs almost everywhere.
Yeah.
Now you might have to drive 30 miles or something like that, but it's not like I'm going to have to drive half a day to go shoot my rifle.
Right.
So even like here, we've got down in Talladega, the ultimate rifle range in the world down there that they've just got going a couple of years ago. So most everybody has a club range or something that they're a member of where they can go shoot. But again, remember that the majority of your practice should be done dry.
Gotcha.
And then you just go to the range. It kills me when people go, I hadn't been able to practice because the range is closed. And I'm like, oh, yeah. Shame on you.
Right, not taking it quite as seriously as I told you, are you?
Right.
Yeah,
Crawfishing.
yeah. Do you have a and in your general rifle class? Do you have women that take that
Definitely,
that are into hunting too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we offer group classes throughout the year, and like you mentioned, our big focus is in a little bit different area, but we do general purpose classes and that type stuff, and we'll have we do group classes, but we also do private tutorials. So what's cool is we'll have a family, and it'll be mom and dad and son, daughter, that kind of stuff. Yeah. And they'll sign up for a private instruction, private tutorial.
Yeah.
And that's really cool. I enjoy the small stuff, the small classes, because I'm able to teach versus just instruct.
Right.
So we can progress at a rate they're comfortable with. We can focus on all the little details that they need help with and everything. It's very satisfying for me. And, they seem to enjoy it. I think I do a decent job.
Right. Well, it's fun. It's stressful. It is for me because
it's mentally and physically demanding, right, for sure.
Plus, I get irritated at you after having not listened to you most of my life, and then I go to your school and I have to listen to you and actually do what you say. It's horrible.
Like I was telling you yesterday, when I'm talking, stop whatever it is you're doing.
Yeah,
and listen.
That was a mixed success with that, I'm sure. But I do it, and it's one of the things is I've gotten so much out of it here. That's the only reason I ever come here anyway.
Sure. I don't really like you.
I don't really like you and haven't since the early 70s. So one last book you showed me as a fundamental was Student and Sniper Sergeant.
Yeah, I just brought that out because that's one of the early classics. It's really hard to find right now.
Gotcha.
But the cool thing is you see here's an American, here's an English guy, and they're all back then doing the same stuff, man.
Right.
It's all connected.
Right. Well, I was talking to somebody about that R.W. McBride book, and one of the things that was funny in there, funny or dark humor, whatever, was they would get bored, He would hold the sniper station. They were in the no man's land between the two trenches. And they would get bored in the middle of the night and decide that they would take some of those small grenades, 12 gauge, and a couple of handguns and small arms.
Friday night fun.
And they'd crawl across and crawl into the opposite trench and hunt around until they found somebody that wanted to fight.
It's hard for us to imagine that kind of life.
It is
today.
Yeah, it is. And he put that whole book together afterwards.
Yeah.
It's an immersion. And I go back to that book a lot, and it's not an easy read. It's not like a something to take up like a John Grisham novel.
Sure.
It's a deep read. But going from literature to riflery and art, one of the things we talked about, I want to close on too, is you were saying that you had spent a lot of time doing metal sculpture and you're working on the knife thing. You've always been I'd say your bent is towards being an artist, and you've taken this immersion in the life of firearms as really part of your art. That's what's totally different to me about training here, about hanging out here in the library talking, about stepping back from the range where everything is really serious. It's fun, but it's dead serious, and then you're pulling back in here and you're kind of in this world where there's, you're a metal sculpture guy, you're a knife maker. I won't call you a Renaissance man because I've known you too long.
Yeah.
But how do you speak to that really?
In my opinion,
if you can,
sure, I'll do my best. I may come up short as usual, but Martin Luther King had if you're going to be a street sweeper, be the best street sweeper ever.
You bet. Yeah.
Anything you do, there has to be, it should be as an artist. It doesn't matter if you're cutting 2x4s or you're building a fine stock for a rifle. It's all about artwork, the art of the rifle, like Cooper.
Right.
The art of doing metal sculpture, making knives. I built a few custom Smith & Wesson revolvers. I'm just into art. And that applies, again, it goes across the board through everything you do. You have to take joy in what you do.
Yeah.
If you're not taking joy in it,
Yeah.
if you're like dreading, I got to do this, you're not going to do your best.
Right.
And it doesn't matter what we do, whether it's painting, drawing, metal sculpture, making knives. You have to do the best you can do. You have to be emotionally invested in it so that you get your feelings into that wood, metal, or canvas.
Yeah. Gotcha. I remember you said you were making all those masks for a long time, but you had to quit.
Some of my artwork was kind of disturbing. I gave y'all one.
Yeah.
I would make these masks for hanging on the wall, and people are like, that's kind of really makes me feel uneasy. I'm like, cool. You know, art, not all art is supposed to make you feel happy and joyful.
Right.
You look inside and you go, oh, man.
It's dark in there, man.
Let's shut that cabinet.
Yeah, and it might be, it might lower your customer base if they have to keep the mask in a trunk.
Yeah. Here, come in here. I'm going to show you.
I'm going to show you some artwork, man. All right, I'm going to close it up. Have you got any final thoughts? Got any? You don't have to have like epiphanies and
Man, my thing is, and I know this is kind of off topic maybe, but think about like today and tomorrow are going to be the best days of your life.
Yeah.
And whether you're hunting game or whether you're on the range practicing or whether you're at work, it doesn't matter. Like today is going to be the best. What I tell everybody after class is best day on the range ever. Mm-hmm. And it was,
Mm-hmm.
It's like do the best you can do at whatever you're doing.
Mm-hmm. And people are having fun.
Sure.
I mean, I've seen it, and it's serious fun, but it's deep, man, and that's what brings me back to this over and over again.
It's a deep subject.
It's a deep
you
subject.
Can spend your life on it and never master it, but as long as you're getting a little bit better every time, you're headed in the right track.
Right on, man. Let's hit the range. Enjoyed it, Tiger. Thanks a lot.
You bet, man.